All right, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, can I just come back to you now? Of course, we just saw the ceremonial welcome. We know that the bilateral talks will be taking part after this. When we were talking about the topics that will be discussed upon, we talked about defense and trade. You also mentioned agriculture. Of course, there are other topics like space and technology which will be talked about. If you could also give us an understanding of how that, what that could inculcate.
Looking at these visuals reminded me of my days in service, where this was actually the most impressive part of any visit. The sheer grandeur of this visit was always seen in this ceremony. But that aside, coming to technology and space. So the space coordination with the Russians continues. Yes, our last astronaut did go to the International Space Station, but that is also a Russian collaboration. And I see that this part would continue. The second part is on technology. And in technology, I would put nuclear reactors very high on the agenda. You know, as part of its internationally committed national goals, India is committed to reduce its carbon footprint. And in that, nuclear power plays an important role. And the Kudankulam nuclear power plant, which Russia has built, and others are very important. Now, Russia seems to have very good small nuclear power plant. And I think those are one subject of discussion which could lead to a positive outcome. If Russia could, for instance, use their rupee holdings in India to co-invest with India in small nuclear power plant, they would augment India's power capacity and also increase its green footprint. So I think that is perhaps among the good ones. There are other ongoing programs for collaboration on different technology and research parts, which I think continue, particularly related to defense, metallurgy, and other technological research. And that, I think, is all very useful, but needs to be expanded.
Absolutely. Now, also, I would like to ask you about the overarching message which we can see India and Russia trying to, at this point of time, with all the global happenings happen. What kind of message is this whole summit between India and Russia giving, not just to the West, maybe just also to the other parts of the world?
So if you look at the macro picture, you have a clear assertion of strategic autonomy by India and Russia, doing their own thing as usual without bending to the current winds that are blowing internationally. Yet, we are not unaware that those winds impinge on us both. So we need to be careful about them. At the same time, I think the biggest assertion of these photographs of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin is that a G2 between the US and China is not entirely acceptable to us. And we would prefer a multipolar world in which Europe, ASEAN, and Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, everybody has a role to play. So this understanding that we believe in multipolarity and we believe in multilateralism is some message that is clearly going out.
Absolutely. And our Assistant Editor of Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibil, is also joining us. Siddhant, we just saw the ceremony. And if you could just give us the information, what happens next? What is the latest that we are going to see after this?
Well, the first element of the state visit is over. We saw those grand visuals coming from the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the presidential palace, from the forecourt of the presidential palace, where the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Indian President Droupadi Murmu welcomed the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, we know the second stop will be Rajghat. The Russian President will pay homage at the Samadhi of Mahatma Gandhi. And thereafter, he'll come to the location behind me, that's Hyderabad House, where all the state meetings happen. And there, the India-Russia Annual Summit will take place, the 23rd Annual India-Russia Summit. We will see the press statements as well. In fact, WION team will be present inside as well. So far, the traffic around me is moving. I can tell you that once President is here, this entire area will be on a lockdown. So expect a lot of jam in central Delhi today, even as the Russian President is present. But of course, security on expected lines will be high given the high-profile dignitary India is hosting. We know that there's a lot of media frenzy as well. A lot of genuine interest over this visit coming in the backdrop of global changes, Donald Trump's tariffs, issue of terrorism, changes in the Indo-Pacific, and the focus, of course, remains on the substantive talks as well. Several pacts will be announced, understandings will be given, and announcements on how both sides can engage on trade front, on mobility front, on economic ties. Economic ties remain the key focus amid Donald Trump's tariffs, which have been, of course, not positively impacting the Indian economy. We do expect announcements also in the area of connectivity as well. Of course, the Indian side is going to brief the Indian media. There will be a customary Indian Foreign Ministry briefing as well, expected to happen at 4:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And while the briefing happens, the Russian president travels along with the Indian Prime Minister for a business meeting. The day comes to an end with a banquet at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where the Indian president, the Prime Minister and the Russian president will be present. He, of course, wheels up for Moscow around 10 or 11 p.m. Today. So a packed, tightly scheduled two-day visit of the Russian president, where the focus, of course, is not only on the grand welcome and the state visit, but also on the substantive talks at a time when India is focusing on its strategic autonomy, and the Russian side trying to find more friends across the world, particularly in Asia, where they are orienting their trade and political ties as well. We know the India-Russia relationship has been a strong relationship, historical relationship. The Russians, of course, have strong relationship with the Chinese as well. But above all, an important day for global geopolitics, as all eyes are on Asia.
Absolutely, and a balancing act which we can actually see from India when it comes to with Russia and U.S. Also, I'd like to come to you, Ambassador. You were talking about the G2, which was a really interesting point, because when we look at the SCO meet, that's the optics that we saw there, the leaders, President Xi Jinping, President Putin, and PM Modi interacting right there. It definitely was a sort of a message to the West there. If you could just make us understand how this is going forward. We also know that U.S. President might be meeting President Xi Jinping later next year. How does this all play out, and how is India able to play a balancing act between all these polarities?
Idea that India was playing a balancing act through that photograph with Putin and Xi is perhaps misplaced, because Trump is holding his own talks with Putin and Xi. Yes. So I don't know why he should hold it against somebody else to hold those talks as well, unless that is a new American strategy. The second part is that Russia is aware that following the Ukraine crisis and Western sanctions, they have become much more subservient to Chinese policy than in the past. And I presume they would like to step out to be seen as a bigger power, in which India can play a bigger role. However, Russia is also aware that despite Western sanctions on Russia, China has not stopped its relationship with either Europe or the Americans. They are developing the relationship post-haste in order to keep up their floundering economy. So I think there are lessons in this for Russia. And if the Ukraine crisis ends, I think we are better placed to move towards a multipolar world in which India and Russia will both be important players.
Absolutely. I understand that. And also when you look at Europeans, we just got to know that they had agreed on some sanctions on Russia. Somehow some member states disagreed on it and actually were going against that. On that part, how does, when it comes to oil, so we know about the trade in oil, but what are the other factors that maybe India can balance out with Russia? Because we know that India did limit its oil imports. What are the other aspects which India can work upon in balancing that with Russia, so that they have a balance in trade, especially?
I heard our minister say that we want a balanced trade with Russia. I think that's a bit of a pipe dream. When your exports are 5 billion and your deficit is 60 billion, I mean, you're not going to get to a balance for a long time. What you should do is find new avenues for Indian exports, particularly those which are suffering from American sanctions and Western.
All right, of course, that was joining us with Ambassador Gurjeet Singh. He is his former Indian ambassador to ASEAN. Will be connected to him. There was some connection issue right there, but what we saw right now.